Musashi has that courage most people never find, to look at himself completely. No layers, no masks, no stories to justify his wrongs, and it is destroying him. Because too much self-awareness without peace becomes its own prison. You know exactly what you lack. You know exactly what needs to change. And that knowledge, without the ability to accept it, becomes a torture more precise than anything an enemy could inflict. This is Musashi's real battle, not the one fought with a sword. There is something Dostoevsky understood that most people spend their whole lives avoiding. In Notes from Underground, he wrote about a man so self-aware he becomes paralyzed, too conscious to act, too honest to lie to himself, too proud to accept comfort he hasn't earned. A man who sees himself completely and is destroyed by what he sees. That is Musashi, not because he is weak, but because he is honest. In a world full of men who never question themselves, who fight for glory, for reputation, for the simple pleasure of winning, Musashi carries something heavier. He questions everything, his path, his purpose, the meaning behind every duel, every mile, every choice. Most people can't do that. Most people don't survive it. And that's the paradox. Introspection is the beginning of real change. Without it, nothing grows, nothing transforms, nothing becomes more than it already is. That brutal, uncomfortable confrontation with yourself, the underground man, is not the enemy. It's the door. But a door is only useful if you walk through it. Musashi keeps standing in the doorway. There is a particular kind of pain that comes from watching someone do effortlessly what you have been bleeding to achieve. When Musashi encounters Sasaki Kojiro, really sees him, sees what he is and how he moves, something inside Musashi fractures. Not because Sasaki Kojiro defeats him, but because Sasaki Kojiro doesn't even seem to be trying. No overthinking, no burden, no war inside his chest, just presence, just simplicity. And in that moment, all of Musashi's self-awareness turns against him. Why do I struggle so much? Am I even on the right path? What is all of this for? This is what makes self-awareness dangerous without self-acceptance. Musashi sees everything clearly. He can name what he lacks, trace where it comes from, understand it in ways most men never could. But that clarity, without peace, becomes just a more sophisticated way of attacking yourself. Between you and yourself, there are no layers, no masks, no comfortable stories. You know what you lack. You know what needs to improve. And that knowledge, in the wrong hands, your own hands, becomes a weapon. Musashi is incredibly strong, and he feels inferior anyway, because he is not measuring himself against other men. He is measuring himself against an ideal that keeps moving the moment he gets close. Every answer opens 100 new questions. Every peak reveals a higher mountain. And at some point, the weight of all that knowing becomes indistinguishable from suffering. Here's what makes Musashi's situation so recognizable. He walked away from Otsu. There was a real life there, love, stillness, a future that didn't require him to keep destroying himself. And he left it, not because he didn't feel it, but because something inside him couldn't accept peace he hadn't earned through suffering. That's the burden of ambition at its most painful. It doesn't just drive you forward. It makes you reject the things that could actually save you. The mind that questions everything eventually turns on its own happiness, finds reasons it isn't deserved, finds flaws in the stillness, keeps moving because stopping feels like surrender. Musashi overthinks every encounter, every relationship, every moment of potential rest. He is always in his head, analyzing, questioning, pushing. And the cruel irony is that the further he goes, the more complicated it gets. More skill, more power, fewer answers. This is what Nietzsche was trying to solve. Not to stop questioning, never that, but to find a way through the weight rather than being crushed underneath it. To carry the burden honestly, for as long as it takes, and eventually arrive at something like acceptance, not of defeat, of life as it actually is, rather than life as it should be. He called it yes-saying, the ability to look at everything, the struggle, the loss, the questions that never resolve, and choose it anyway, not because it's perfect, because it's yours. Musashi isn't there yet. For most of his journey, he is still fighting the life he's living, rather than inhabiting it. But here's what Vagabond does that most stories don't. It lets Musashi walk long enough to start changing, not through a single revelation, not through one decisive duel that hands him all the answers, but slowly, quietly, through accumulation and exhaustion and the small moments between the violence where something in him begins to loosen. He starts to become simpler, not weaker, simpler, more present, less tangled in the meaning of everything, and more willing to just exist inside the moment. The sword that was once an extension of his desperation starts to become an extension of something quieter. And that movement, that slow, painful movement away from overthinking and toward presence, is one of the most honest things Vagabond puts on the page. Because it doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't come from reading the right philosophy or training the right technique. It comes from carrying the weight long enough to finally understand which parts of it were never his to carry. The self-awareness that was once his prison becomes his compass. The questions that once paralyzed him become the road. The difference is that he stops needing them to be answered before he can move. That is the shift. Not from thinking to not thinking. From thinking that traps to thinking that walks. There are people who never look inward, who move through life on the surface, untouched by the deeper questions, unbothered by the gap between who they are and who they could be. They will never change. Not really. And then there are the ones who look too hard, who see themselves so clearly, so honestly, so relentlessly, that the seeing itself becomes the suffering, who have more questions every day than the day before, who are harder on themselves than anyone else would ever be. Both are traps. The ones who never question themselves will never change, but the ones who question everything risk never moving at all. Musashi's real journey, underneath all the duels, all the miles, all the blood, is learning this, that the path isn't to stop looking inward. It's to learn when to put the mirror down, not because the reflection lies, but because at some point you've seen enough to know what needs to be done. And the only thing left is to walk. Build quietly. Walk your path.